Are we live?
It should be starting any minute now. If you are joining us, Steve and I, please perhaps let us know that you can see us. Send us some hearts or thumbs up, or say hi, something, so that we know that you are with us. That would be great. Um, Steve, I don't know if you want to check if I'm on my feed.
Yep,
Oh, I can do that
you're appearing on Facebook. You have
from.
captions running and everything, so we're doing well.
Excellent, cool. We're winning. We're winning. Okay, so thank you, Steve, for joining me here today. A few days ago, you interviewed me and asked me about my coaching journey. And so we thought it would be quite a good idea to reverse the tables a little bit and um, get you to speak about your coaching journey and the where you've come from and where you are now as a result. So I'm going to ask you a few burning questions, probing questions to
I think
help.
your exact words were, Sarah, you wanted to get your own back. Is that right?
Uh, I was going to say that, and then I thought, oh, you've got me so right. It's like you know me or something, Steve.
It's like we've been working together for a few years.
Yeah. So really what I'm going to be doing is just asking you a little bit about your journey as a coach and allow you to do most of the speaking today instead of the other way around. So maybe you're getting your own back on me, in fact. And just ask you about kind of where you came from, how you came to be involved in coaching, what it was that kind of led you to it, and perhaps the process you went through and where you are today. So, just for everyone watching, I just wanted to kind of point out, I thought it was nice to do a little bit of an introduction about who we are, because we run coach training programs. And we help people to become confident and to build up the trust of the people they're working with, so that they can really deliver impactful coaching that makes a difference to the other people that they're working with. And that is whether you are a leader, a consultant, whether you want to be a coach professionally, in whatever way you want to use coaching. We're all about kind of getting people out there to be the leader in other people's eyes that they can be, by helping them move forwards and have their clients trust in them. So we have a number of programs that are about coaching education, but also about how to be the best leader you can in terms of being a coach. So, with that introduction out of the way, Steve, um, we've known each other for many years before you became a coach, and you've in fact been a friend of North Point for a long time. So, what was it that got you interested in coaching in the first place? Perhaps what space were you in? Where were you at that point when you kind of decided to, and when you came across coaching and when you decided to kind of press the button on
Yeah, I mean, in truth, I was conned into it, Sarah. I was, I
that?
was,
Yeah.
I was tricked, bait and switch.
Yeah.
So I'd been doing work. I'd just left my first company at that time, and had reconnected with Matt, who's one of the co-founders, along with yourself.
Yes,
And both of you were based out in Dubai at the time.
absolutely.
And I'd reconnected with Matt after a few years. He'd gone to train to be an outdoor adventure instructor, and then had found his way to
Mhm.
the Middle East,
Yeah,
and then somewhere along the line had become a coach. And you and he were setting up North Point,
we were.
and you were asking questions about what should the web presence be about, and my interest, my background there was from web development background, but actually asking some of the deeper questions as to, well, who is it you're trying to target? It doesn't just need to look nice; it needs to. How do you understand who you're talking to? How do you understand what it is that they want out of this
Mm,
experience? And so we got together in Dubai and had a
we
brilliant
did.
time out there with
We
you all,
did. We did. A birthday dinner for Matt as well, if I
and a
remember
birthday dinner
correctly.
from Matt. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was a great time. And really the conversation was around, what is it you're doing, who are you serving, and how we're going to help help get that off the ground as well as we can.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
at that stage, it really wasn't about coaching for me. It was about how can we support Matt, and later as I got to know you, how can I support
Yeah.
you and North Point as a whole. And from there started my first sort of foray into coaching and
Amazing.
what coaching could mean for me.
Okay. So what was it then that led you to take the path down further down the journey? What was missing that made you kind of go, oh, okay, actually, I want to swap from being a supplier to these guys to actually being a client?
That's a good question. Again, I was conned into it.
You
Um,
really were.
no,
Like
I,
you
well,
had
so
no
we
choice.
we had no choice. We'd been working together for a number of time. You know, at
Yeah.
first you were still out in Dubai, then you just more latterly moved back to the UK.
Yeah.
Those conversations had been going on. My role within North Point was changing and evolving a little bit.
Yeah.
I think there are bits that now I join the dots. Now I look back on that, I can
Mhm.
see where some of those things, my early career in the NHS, some of
Yes.
the things that were happening there for me about building team here in the UK. So I
Mhm.
was, managing a small team. I think probably up to about 10 people at one stage.
Yeah.
And looking back, it becomes really obvious where my interest in performance and improving my performance and improving their
Mm.
performance comes from. But I think at the time it wasn't nearly so intentional. And you had come back to the UK, and I think you basically said, Steve, how long have you been tracking with North Point and you still haven't done the training? This just doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So you were running the first UK cohort, and
I
we said,
was.
right, let's just make this happen. So
Yeah.
so I started my actual coaching journey. I think probably the major highlights in the run up to that was receiving coaching myself.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so that was a great lead in for me. That was that point where I really got that sense of what is this, what's the mechanism, and what's the impact.
Mhm.
So for me at that time, that was before I'd moved into the work where I was managing the team,
Mhm.
and it was a quid pro quo. Actually, it was Matt. I did some work for Matt, and Matt repaid me in a coaching series.
Yeah.
And for me, there were some things going on there. I was working from home, and the break there between my work life and my home life was challenging, and as I was just trying to orientate myself to that and get some good
Mhm.
rhythms in. Those are
Yeah.
things that we're probably all much more used to now after several years of lockdowns and all sorts of things, and it
Absolutely.
feels much more settled. But for there were some really profound things that I think we went through and
Mhm.
really started to open up my eyes to coaching and what it could achieve for me. But I think actually one of
Mm.
the ones that really sticks with me is Matt just saying, right, well, what options do you have for this? And we'd spent some time
Yeah.
outlining the problem and really sort of laying it bare, pulling
Mhm.
apart all the pieces. What options do you have?
Yeah.
If some of this is about finding another space where you can kind of get your head straight, what are you going to do about that? What are your options, and what action are you going to commit to today that's going to make a difference? And when you put it like that, it's so simple. It's so simple. And the moment he challenged me to find some options around it, it became really obvious that I had probably access to 5 or 6 different spaces, all with different
Mm.
merits, pros and cons, um, that I could access regularly and with ease. And actually, that shift in geography, that shift in physical space, we had already worked out that my intuition
Yeah.
was that would have a big benefit. I just felt a bit trapped. I didn't have an office anymore because I'd left my previous company, or I'd sold out from my previous company, and I think I felt the sort of the trapping of not having some of those things that I've been used to
Mm.
before, and the simplicity of that, the sheer like brazen simplicity of you've got more options than you think you have. You have more agency
Mhm.
than you currently think you have. You can do more about where you find yourself now than you think you can.
Fantastic.
And now what are you going to do about it? Because once you've had that realization, once you've had that recognition that you have options, that you can exercise your own agency, with then suddenly it becomes very difficult to unsee that.
Absolutely. It's hard not to take action then, isn't it? Because it's there.
Absolutely. And then you've got a coach behind you saying,
Yeah.
Steve, we met 2 weeks ago and you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Why haven't you done them? Or
Yeah.
how are you tracking with those?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So,
yeah,
so coaching itself had a profound impact upon you and the way you were doing things at that
hmm
time. So, what was it then that led you? I mean, and yes, I'm aware that we pushed you into it, coerced you, and
I was conned,
forced you,
Sarah.
and you were conned into coming on the course.
I'm going to stick to that.
Yeah, you can stick to that, but bearing in mind it was probably a good con, right? Because what did
It
you,
was the best of
you know,
cons.
there you go. So what is it that led you to think that becoming more of a professional coach would be of benefit to you, or to have professional coaching skills, may I say?
Yeah, and yeah, it'd be clear to separate those.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I am joking about the con. It was something that, although actually, I will probably I don't know exactly the questions you're going to ask, but I probably will
Mm,
touch on this. It probably will come out later. Like the level of intentionality with which I went into coaching was much lower, or certainly of a very
yeah.
different quality than the level of intentionality I would now bring to something of the same ilk. So I think it's
Okay.
raised my sense both through exercising my agency, but the levels of intentionality I bring to the things I'm doing has gone up as a result of
Okay.
coaching. So
Interesting.
I'll probably loop back to that later.
Okay.
So my previous experience was and a lot of this was retrospective, as I said.
Mm,
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of my early
yeah.
experience was in the NHS, and I
Yeah.
worked across multiple teams in my time in the NHS. So I probably worked. Well, at one point I was working with dissolvable teams, so
Mm-hmm.
we would go into we were sort of first port of call. I was employed by what was it? I had an ad hoc um, contract, which was quite really rare at the time. This was before, so there's a thing called
Mm-hmm.
NHSP, which is sort of the NHS's professional uh, what's it called, agency. It was before that. I had
Okay.
a very unusual contract with Medicine Elderly Care where
Mm-hmm.
I was on the
Okay.
books and I could go in, but I had no set hours. And what I tended to do
Nice.
was work with teams who were opening decommissioned wards. So they'd plan for months to close a ward, and close on the Friday, and then Monday morning, suddenly it doesn't make sense because there are 30 beds down across the hospital, and we don't have anywhere to
Yeah.
put walking wounded. So there was that. I'd seen a lot of great management. I'd seen some iffy management. I'd seen
Mm-hmm.
some a lot of management under duress. With some things that were very tight. And this was, this was almost 15 years ago
Yeah.
now, and things I don't think have got much better. Um, but I had that real sense of what it's like to be working under great management, and
Yeah.
potentially also what it's like to be working under not so great management.
Yeah. We've all had those.
Um, and also that realization that sometimes it's okay management, but I wasn't the
Yeah.
right person to receive it, or I wasn't in the right place, and there
Mm-hmm.
was certainly some of that as well. It wasn't a
Yeah.
job that I loved for other reasons.
Yeah.
Um, then moving on through much later on, working much more work with clients. So
Okay. Yeah.
recognizing how you relate to clients, how you work with clients, what's that interaction about? What are some of the
Yeah.
qualities that you want out of that? How are we getting the best out of that relationship? Um, and then later on, I always wanted to build a team, and I was doing that. And I think on some levels, I was a pretty good team lead, and in other ways, I was a terrible team lead. So I look back at that period, and there were some things where I think I really excelled, and some things where I think I really failed. And
Yeah.
I'm sure those who were around me at the time would probably agree with one of those statements more than the other. Um, uh, so I learned a lot about
Mm-hmm.
those dynamics, those interpersonal dynamics. Obviously, having been a nurse in the NHS, you also have a lot of interpersonal connection with patients and people in difficult situations as well. So I was intrinsically
Yeah.
interested, or very interested in the dynamics, and how those dynamics are
Yeah.
created and how they work. I think I had never found a framework by which that made sense, um,
Okay.
by which you could intentionally, there's that word again, but purposefully build something that feels vital, feels generative positively, that feels beneficial
Mhm.
to everyone in the room by design. And I think as
Yeah.
I did the coach training, it all started to fit into place. Actually, using these skills, uh, and actually, as much about how it changed my approach and my thinking and the
Yeah.
mindset that I was coming into that, as well as some of the soft skills you were using to achieve that as
Yeah.
well. That really you could have a marked impact on people's performance, on their quality of experience of their work life, and I'd extend that into personal life as well. But that's, I don't do
Yeah.
much personal coaching. It's more tends to be more around role specific work. But I
Yeah.
know those who do life coaching would probably say the same thing of life coaching.
Yes. Yeah. So and that's it, because coaching is coaching, and it doesn't matter where you put it, it has an impact. Um, but so tell me, because when you interviewed me, of course, you were talking to me, and I actually was trained through a different course of my own because I hadn't written it yet. But what were some of the things on the course, perhaps some of the tools and techniques that impacted you the most and had the most impact on what you were doing?
What had the most impact? NPM has been profoundly um, altering for me,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing how that connection with people works, recognizing that
Mm-hmm.
somebody has an internal world
Yeah.
that I don't have right to claim. I have
Yeah.
no right to whatever you are thinking and feeling,
Absolutely.
but that is there is a corollary to those thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
feelings, and that is what the actions, the decisions we make, and the way that then that alters the ripples of impact that makes. So having access to that, and recognizing that as a sort of the fabric of
Mm-hmm.
of the real world we share, of the reality that we share, that has been transformational.
Fantastic. And just for those who are watching, the NPM, which Steve's referring to, is our North Point meta model, which is one of our core um, tools upon which every models, which are upon all of our other models are built. So it really is very core. And Steve, you described it beautifully there. So I don't need to go into too much detail, but we do have people watching. So I thought it'd be useful just to kind of give them a bit more background on that.
Hmm.
Back to you. What else?
I think also the advanced model of the
Mm-hmm.
NPM includes the role of values and beliefs.
Yeah,
And one of the things that has absolutely shifted for me has been the relationship between values and beliefs. So belief
fantastic.
often comes with a big B. We think of belief
Yeah.
in terms of kind of religious systems, or
Mm-hmm.
the capital B belief. But the advanced model says that actually values are underneath beliefs, and beliefs can be
Mm-hmm.
rewritten, and they're
Yeah.
malleable, whereas values tend to be much more stable.
Mm-hmm.
And that uh, on my cohort, Jolene, I remember doing some coaching with me. I'll name her
Yeah.
because she was the coach at that point, not me.
Yeah.
Um, and the impact of that when she dived into the advanced part of the NPM
Mm-hmm.
when I was the coachee, and I remember just the lights going on when she challenged me about something, pulled me back to the values, brought me back up to a new belief,
Yeah.
and back into the NPM. In that, it changed my whole approach to a problem.
Yeah.
And I remember that just being just just almost like just so transformational, so powerful.
Yeah.
To have experienced that felt like a real privilege. The
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that was big for
And
me.
kudos to Jolene.
Uh, yeah, she's a great coach.
Yeah.
Um, the I think the other thing is is and also part of my training that actually I did just before I did the coach training
Okay.
was facilitator training. So Institute of Cultural Affairs and some of their theories and
Hmm.
practices, and I think I'm now a big advocate of facilitative techniques and
Hmm.
methodologies as a whole, and I consider coaching to be one of those. I'm sure there are those who may argue with my interpretation there, but to move away from being the natural consultant that I am, which is what I was doing more of with my,
Hmm.
I was doing that with North, with my other
Yeah.
clients.
And we
To
wanted you to be a consultant in that place, but yeah.
absolutely, but to be able to move into to have the choice to take my
Hmm.
consultant hat off and put my facilitator cap back on and say, I don't need to bring all the answers here to be seen as, I don't need to be the important person in the room if that's not appropriate.
Hmm.
Where is the wisdom in the room coming from?
Absolutely.
And how can I lean into somebody else's experience and raise something meaningful and create a space, hold a space for that meaning to become apparent, rather than me having to be the one desperately trying to introduce it to earn my keep, to earn
Yeah.
my hourly rate.
And I know that that was an enlightening moment also for you in this, was that, oh, I don't always need to be telling people what to do. I don't need,
Yep.
actually people have these answers themselves. And I know that that was also kind of maybe an internal struggle that you had throughout the course, but something, and maybe even still do to this day occasionally, but much better at being able to place yourself in that coach space if you need to and if you want to, if it's the right thing to do.
Well, that's yeah, and I think struggle is a really interesting word
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't. My struggle would be to make sure I'm recognizing accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't have a struggle with being able to choose,
Yes.
which is the nice thing. Once you have that awareness to say, how do I now choose to bring myself to this moment?
Yes.
And that can happen within a session. If I'm with a client for
Mm-hmm.
half a
Yeah.
day, I can choose moment by moment. Do I want to introduce
Yeah.
my coach self, with some of
Yeah.
those skills, or do I need to put the other cap on and claim ownership of some big ideas that are going to move them forwards? But to have that agency, that ability to say,
Mm-hmm.
I can now pick and choose. Whereas before I was very much slave to, I need to be seen as the one having the big answers, to
Yeah.
presenting the big hitters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. There's place for that, but there's also a lot of ego wrapped up in that. That can become a very difficult place to maintain because you run dry one day in a meeting and suddenly you feel on the back foot and you've got nowhere to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's resilience comes to having both set of skills in my tool belt.
Fantastic. So tell me what then, and you've kind of started to go into this a little bit already, but what are you doing differently now that you weren't doing before you had coaching under your belt?
Almost everything.
Okay,
Genuinely,
yeah,
I I was reflecting on this the other day. I was just heading off into town to see a friend. I'm a calmer driver. I was never an angry driver. Don't get me wrong. I was never a
yeah.
kind of me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a calmer driver. I'm more present.
Nice.
I'm more in the moment. I still get angry and annoyed and absolutely, but I process that down quicker. I've never been overly emotional, and I don't think I've got any sort of big blocks there. I just don't think I'm a massively emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple of little things, but I'm now much better at recognizing emotions. It doesn't make me much more emotional
Yeah.
in terms of my appearance, but I'm much more able to recognize, am I angry? Am I annoyed? I render those things
Mm-hmm.
down much quicker. I
Nice.
give myself a lot more grace, I think. I remember a good few years ago, I felt like I needed all the answers in the moment. I'm now much more capable
Mm-hmm.
of saying, I'm going to go away and think about that. I'll be with you in a couple of days and I'm going to let that
Nice.
simmer. And by sort of by reverse,
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more gracious, I think, towards other people. I still get annoyed
Amazing.
at the angry driver, and you can be a bit like an ex-smoker in that regard. But I'm much quicker to then say maybe they're just having a bad day. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe okay, that's fine. to
Yeah.
recognize that people have got a world of their own going on that
Hmm.
I don't get to comment on. I don't get to, there's no value in that. And unless I'm in a relationship where they're asking for my help in drawing that out, either as a consultant or as a facilitator of
Hmm.
that space, then I have no right to that. And I can't let that. I now need to create some boundaries in my own emotional life to say, do you know what? Drive like an idiot. That's fine. I'm picking on that example specifically, but that
Yeah.
extends to other areas as well. And to let,
I
how,
was just going to say that would be
it's
a
not just
great ad,
driving.
wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Our new course is going to teach you how
Coaching
to
improves you.
be, yeah. Well, we found yesterday, bombshell the other day, it helps you get a life partner. And today we found out it makes you a better driver. I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
coaching genuinely, we could heal the world.
We could
Um,
indeed.
but I think it's that moment of being very much more present, as I said, but that
Hmm.
allowance then for other people to let them be people, and for
Yeah,
you to be a whole person, but also the
fantastic.
boundaries that if you're going to be angry, to unless you're really in my can kind of let you need to be you, I need to be me. Maybe I have to
Yeah,
step in because I feel that that's unfair on another person who doesn't have that option, or maybe there
yeah.
are cases, but I have options. And if you're
Hmm.
present and have a lived experience of your own agency, that's a profoundly rewarding way of living, I have found, because
I love that. Yeah.
because I can walk into most moments, feel connected with myself, which helps me then respond much more appropriately with other people, and sort of enjoy that journey. And even better, right at the end of it, those times where I get that completely wrong and still mess up, I still have grace for myself to say, okay, dust yourself off. What have you learned? How are you going to do it better next time? What are your options
That's amazing.
about it? So it's that whole, I mean, it's
Hmm.
cyclical at this point. What are your options?
Yeah,
What are you going to do about it? You messed that up, didn't you, Steve? Yeah, don't beat yourself up about it, but what are you going to do better about it next time? Great. Make a note of that. Uh, Practice.
fantastic. And you know that I agree with you on the personal kind of level of coaching. I love to hear you talk about that, and you talk about your agency. So you've mentioned that word agency so many times throughout this. So um, I'm wondering, in terms of how you work with your clients now, because you had clients before. I know that you've continued to work with many of them, beyond that. It's not like you've done a complete 360 in your career, and you may have added something onto it, but you haven't kind of changed some of those clients. So I was wondering, what benefit has it had on the people you're working with?
Well, we might need to ask them that. It's probably
Well,
unfair for me to answer
okay,
on their
what
behalf,
benefit
but
do you feel that you've had on your clients?
I think some of them I do actual code. That's now
Yeah,
an option. So
yeah.
I can choose now to, as I'm working with a senior leadership team,
Hmm.
and I'm choosing to go down a mentor route rather than a coaching route at the
Yeah.
moment. That's more appropriate for that.
Hmm.
Um, I have had people come to me and say coaching has. I actually had, and I'm not boasting about this, but we had somebody who undertook some therapy, and they recognized some of the they found kind of synthesis between the therapy they'd gone through and
Hmm.
the North Point, but they actually found that the coaching approach, or the approach I delivered at that time in their life, because we also have
Yeah,
to recognize,
yeah,
gave them a sense of how they could actually put it into practice in a way that the therapy hadn't, which I found really
yeah,
interesting. That actually, and it was there was quite a complicated story to that. I think it was,
yeah,
but it was super interesting to know actually there was a kind of a therapy, and I'm very clear not to practice therapy.
yeah,
Coaching should not
yeah,
be therapy, and we're very clear about that
yeah.
in our training.
And
But
I would also put out there that we're not saying anything bad about therapy. There are
I
places where that absolutely is needed.
my wife is trained to
Yeah,
be a therapist, so I need to be incredibly
yes.
careful. Um, she'll kill me. Um, but I found that really interesting. That
Exactly.
actually there is something really powerful in understanding that you
Yeah,
you have options, you have more options than you think you
yeah,
do, and you can take action.
absolutely.
And we talk about the drama triangle, and Cartman stepping out of that. you know, if you feel like a victim, you're going to close down on what are my options, and you're going to be demotivated to move those forwards
Yeah.
into something actionable and generative. And so yeah, so agency has become a massive, well, it's subject to the book that I started writing
Uh-huh.
in September, which needs some rework. But this
Maybe you
idea of
need a coach to help you.
maybe maybe I need a coach. There we go. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, between agency and attention, there's something about where we put our attention. It's still a major technology of
mhm,
humanity, that where we put our attention, things change.
mhm.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
whatever you might say about um, any current political thing, actually, where we choose to put our attention matters,
It does.
because that's where things change.
Mhm.
You know, you might have, say, battery technology. We might have a big complaint of the state of lithium, but fundamentally, we've been putting new attention into battery tech, and it's moved forwards faster in the last 5 years than it has for 50. And, you know, we might say snapshot, there are problems with it, but actually our attention is in a really interesting place. And the more attention we put onto it, the quicker we're going to find even better solutions.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, attention, what we choose to change and what we choose to attend, changes in our
Mhm,
favor for the
mhm,
things we
mhm.
want. So attention, agency, options. I
Yeah.
think those are the things that people have experienced
Yeah.
through having worked with me.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree where we put our attention is really important. You can just take COVID as an example of where we managed to find solutions to that very,
Yeah.
very quickly, whereas there are other illnesses out there where we perhaps haven't spent that degree of attention over a short span of time just because that needed fixing very quickly. So,
Mm-hmm.
whereas we, they feel that they've got longer to do it, in other circumstances.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I agree that personally, when we're able to spend that attention on ourselves, we start looking at it, and then things change. They start to transform, and it's about us getting out of the way of ourselves and
Yeah.
allowing that transformation to occur, and kind of going with the. But I'm taking my story and not yours,
That's all
Steve.
right. Well, no, I think for me it's
Yeah,
been an interesting, and I
yeah,
think we're probably coming off story into
yeah,
you and I just
yeah.
chewing the cud here. But I know it's a little bit contentious within some of the coaching circles that
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
speak. But I don't believe in kind of law of attraction. I don't believe in law
yeah,
of attraction. I believe in the law of attention. You know,
no,
when
yeah.
I remember really silly a number of years ago, I said to a friend just off the cuff, I was like, I haven't seen a Nissan Micra. I think they've all. I think the Illuminati have removed all the Nissan Micras from the world. It was a joke. And the next 2 weeks, I couldn't see anything but Nissan Micras.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
this tiny little
absolutely.
car
Yeah,
that I couldn't. My brain had just tuned out. That I in that
yeah,
moment I was making this gag,
yeah.
but having had that moment of attention, suddenly all I could see was Nissan Micras,
Yes.
uh, and um. And so yeah, the law of attention. What I choose to put my attention on, the things I choose to set up as goals, the
Mm-hmm.
things I choose to be important to me, are the things that I'm going to move towards. It's the law of
Excellent.
tension, not the law of attraction.
Yes, and I think that I would agree with you on that. So I'm not going to get through into that
I'm trying to
conversation
draw
here.
you into it.
That I
Come on,
know you
Sarah.
are,
Come
you are,
on.
you are, and maybe we can do another podcast on that sometime, um, because I could be drawn into that conversation quite easily. So I mean, ultimately, you've talked about the personal, you've talked about your clients and what they get. Is there anything else, any other? You mentioned intentionality before, but I think you've kind of come around to discussing that, or would you like to go
Hmm.
further into that?
No, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like a fundament. I feel like I've woken up. I feel like I've woken up too late. I wish that in my early 20s, I'd had a coach. I wish I'd had somebody who I trusted to, you know, Steve,
Mm-hmm.
that those decisions you're making, is that working out well for you? What is it you actually want there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm maybe a little bit on the fence about that. Sometimes we need those spaces where we're kind of,
Mm-hmm.
whatever analogy you choose, we're sort of wandering a little bit, going with the flow.
Yeah.
But to have that choice, I feel like I kind of drifted into a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was only actually through beginning to run my own companies that you have to kind of start making these sort of real forward decisions, and then I think through the coaching, I feel like that's just really accelerated. Now
Mhm.
I could argue, and actually I was thinking about this the other day, yesterday in the car, kind of in preparation for this call. You could say, well, Steve, you're getting a bit older, maybe just getting a little bit wiser. I mean, let's be small W. Let's not oversell that one. Um, but I do feel I would maintain that coaching has accelerated that. Something about my being present, something about my being
Mhm.
intentional, feels like a type of wisdom. Feels like like Steve's putting his big boy pants on,
Mhm.
and I've kind of grown up a little bit, and I do feel like has really accelerated that, and the quality that I get out of my life now is very, very different, even on days where it doesn't
Mhm.
work, everything
Yeah.
falls over, and life doesn't go the way you want it to, and the house is still a mess,
Mhm.
and those jobs you had to
Yeah.
do are not done. Qualitatively it feels,
Mhm.
and that feels to me like some kind of sort of wisdom thing happening there, sort of like a maturity. I'm a bit mindful of those words because they're all a bit
Yeah.
laden, aren't they? They're a
Yeah.
bit heavy with too much meaning. But it feels like that progression, and I would maintain that coaching has accelerated that massively for me.
So, what would you say to someone who was considering becoming a coach, and we're going to wrap up in a minute because I'm aware that I said we'd only talk for a certain amount of time, and I'm sure I've gone over.
We
I
we
think
we do that.
I'm close to the mark. Um, but to anyone who was considering um, getting into coaching, or perhaps even is a leader who is kind of working their way into how can I use some of these skills, what would you suggest to them? What would be you know, why are
So
you
is
laughing at me?
how clean a question is this, Sarah? Because we run a
um,
free
I'm
experience where somebody
okay,
can come on
so
and get.
no, that was my next question. this was about this was about how do you think. This was a different question. That
Okay.
wasn't that question, but you can go to that question if you want. But no, what I wanted to know is how you believe that having coaching skills could be beneficial to kind of different types of people, and how it could impact them and their lives, and the way they're running things. Because I know you have kind of opinions on kind of where coaching can be useful. So
Mm. I think where people want to move from management into leadership,
mhm,
and I
yeah,
there are some managers who are great leaders, and
mhm,
I would want to encourage anyone who manages, whether
yeah,
that's projects, whether that's clients, whether that's
mhm,
actual teams, you're leading other people through a process, and
yeah.
those processes are not there just for their own sake. Processes, these things we call business, these things we
Yeah,
call organization, we call
yeah,
our work life, have the ability to profoundly benefit us. And we have the ability to both manage widgets, the chess
yeah,
pieces on the board, to get this project out the door. To
yeah.
We can do that. That's management. But there's something I think that happens in leadership when I recognize my ability to
Mhm,
positively or negatively impact this situation. And I think in that sense, anybody can do that. I would maintain that there were, I still remember the janitor at my school. There was something about the way they came to work that when they were doing work, things around the school, left a mark. Like
yeah.
the way they held eye contact and were quick to greet you, and it wasn't just a all
Mhm,
right. There was something special about way they related to the people around them that I think speaks to a leadership quality. So if that's what you want, if you want to feel like you're getting the best out of your job,
mhm,
as a leader, as a manager, if you want to get the best out of your team and you want to be part of positively impacting those around you, I'd suggest you at least look at coaching skills.
mhm.
If nothing else, it gives you the option. I'm going to
Abs-
draw from my coaching skills toolbox today. And I think there's a profound privilege as part of that. I think it will. I would almost guarantee to anybody who meaningfully engaged with it, it would almost certainly improve their own performance. Definitely create better cultures. Definitely support them in having a richer quality of life. Doesn't mean everything goes well all the time, but I think there's that richness.
Mhm.
So I would encourage people to try it and find ways of trying it and getting experience of it, and then pushing it as far as you can.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now I really am going to do the plug. So thank
No,
you for calling me out on that. I'm not going to be so base as to ask you a question about it. I'm actually just going to tell people that we have a 5-day experience, a free 5-day coaching experience happening on the 14th of November.
mhm.
And even though it's over 5 days, we're not asking you to spend the entire 5 days with us. There are tasks in the daytime for you to do, which will take about 30 minutes of your time maximum. You can take a bit longer on them if there's some bonus tasks in there. There's also lives in the evening where you can come along and you can ask for our help with the tasks, or ask us questions gained from our experience in coaching. And really, what we would like people to do is get a little bit of a taste of what coaching can do for them, for their profession, whether they're a leader or if you're a consultant who wants to add coaching in, get a bit of a taste of how can I add coaching into what I do. Or maybe you want to be a professional coach and gain that experience to just understand if it's right for you. So whether you're in any of those, and even we've had some coaches who come along and they want to get more out there, be more confident in their coaching skills, know that they can offer their clients the best that they can be. And because we would always say that coaching is a lifelong journey and a lifelong learning journey. So if any of those apply to you and you want to build up your coaching skills in any way, then this is for you. And you can find out more on and join the challenge, more importantly, on toolsoftransformation.co.uk. So come and join us. We'd love to have you with us. And yeah, anything to add to that, Steve?
No, I think that's you. I just encourage people to try it. What's the worst you can lose? As you said, actually, the
Yeah.
cost, the basic cost is very low.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we do, but the more you can get out of it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
We do sessions, live sessions every day where we're really diving in quite deep onto some of these subjects
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make them as usable and useful for the people on the chat on the experience. Yeah, I for one am quite excited about delivering. It's a couple of weeks away
Uh,
now, so
I absolutely love delivering this. It's such joy to help people. On the last one, I remember someone coming and saying, I just need to improve my listening skills. And by the end of the week, saying, I have learned some real things to put into action around building my listening skills. So that's giving you a sneak peek into one of the topics that we focus on. But we have some great topics just to kind of, and through the 5 days there's a flow to it to help you to build on the skills that you've kind of implemented on previous days. And they're not massive tasks, but they're ones that really have an impact, even though they're small things to do. So I would really encourage you to come along. So with that, Steve, is there anything you wanted to say before we say goodbye to our lovely viewers and finish off for today?
I'd like to say thank you. I'm really super interested in how we do more of this capturing the
Mm-hmm.
coaching journey, because if you've got a product, you say, look, take product A and it's going to have
Yeah.
outcome B. For me, coaching's really hard to give the benefits, because
Mm-hmm.
it's been such a rich
Yeah.
experience for me. Um, so yeah, I'd love to. I think this may be a question for you and I, is maybe how do we draw out some more of these kinds of
Mm.
stories,
Yeah.
And other than that, I wanted to give a shameless plug, but you've covered that. So
Yeah. Well, if you are one of our alumni, or even if you're a coach from another background, because we're open to that as well, and coaching has impacted you, we'd love to have you on our podcast or to interview you and find out how it's impacted you. So do get in touch if you're a coach and would love to have that chat. We're open to that.
absolutely. Thank you,
Okay.
Sarah. You've got control of
I
closing
do.
down the live, so I'll let you do that when you're ready.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our interview today. And goodbye. Bye, Steve.
Cheers, Sarah. Bye, everyone.